I had 10 seconds to choose between the man who would not let me leave and the stranger whose trunk was open. At 11:48 that Thursday night, 10 seconds felt generous. My name is Sophie Bennett. I was 28 years old, an assistant manager at an upscale bakery in Manhattan, and until that night, my biggest problem had been a wedding client changing her cake order 3 times before closing. Then I stepped into the parking garage and saw Ethan Walker standing beside the elevator. My ex-boyfriend. The man I had blocked 6 weeks earlier. The man who still believed no only meant convince me harder. Sophie. His voice carried across the concrete. I stopped. Rainwater dripped from my coat onto the floor. What are you doing here? I just want to talk. I told you not to come to my work. You stopped answering me. As if that explained everything. I turned toward the pedestrian exit. Ethan followed. Sophie, wait. I walked faster. So did he. My pulse climbed. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, reflecting across wet concrete and rows of parked cars. The exit was nearly 100 feet away. Too far. The elevator behind me was worse. Then I saw the black sedan near a private elevator at the far end of the garage. 2 men in dark suits stood beside it. One placed a leather case inside the trunk, then walked toward the driver's side. The other turned away to answer his phone. The trunk remained open. I knew climbing into a stranger's car was ridiculous. I also knew Ethan was getting closer. Sophie, stop making this dramatic. That sentence made the decision for me. I crossed between 2 parked cars and hurried toward the sedan. The man on the phone had his back to me. I reached the trunk, pushed the leather case aside, and climbed inside. My knees pressed against my chest. My purse caught beneath my elbow. I pulled the trunk downward until only a narrow strip of fluorescent light remained. Footsteps echoed nearby. Sophie, Ethan called. I covered my mouth. Through the opening, I saw polished black shoes approach the car. Not Ethan's. Everything ready? A man asked. Yes, sir. Another voice came from somewhere behind him. Mr. Moretti is ready. Moretti. I had never heard the name before. The black shoes moved closer. I lowered the trunk another inch. Then a hand appeared above me. The lid closed with a soft mechanical click. Darkness swallowed me. For a moment, I heard nothing except my own breathing. Then a door opened. Another closed. The engine started beneath me, so quiet I almost missed it. The sedan reversed. My body shifted against the carpet as the car turned toward the garage exit. I had escaped Ethan. Relief lasted about 5 seconds. Then the absurdity of what I had done settled over me. I was locked inside the trunk of an expensive stranger's car near midnight with no idea where it was going. My phone vibrated against my palm. The screen illuminated the darkness. Ethan, I saw you. Another message appeared before I could breathe. Get out of that car, Sophie. I stared at the words. Then a third message arrived. I will find you. The sedan climbed the ramp and entered the rain-soaked streets above. I pressed my head against the carpet and listened as Manhattan traffic surrounded us. Horns, tires against wet pavement, the steady rhythm of windshield wipers somewhere beyond the rear seats. I could have searched for the emergency release. I could have tried to get out when the car stopped. But Ethan had seen the vehicle, and I had no idea whether he was following it. So I stayed still. Minutes passed. The horns became fewer. The road became smoother. Eventually, even the city lights leaking faintly around the trunk disappeared. That was when I realized we were no longer driving through Manhattan. I looked at Ethan's final message glowing in my hand, then remembered the name I had heard before the trunk closed. Mr. Moretti. For the first time that night, I wondered whether I had escaped the wrong man by hiding in the wrong car. For the next 30 minutes, I measured the trip by sound. Tires humming over wet pavement. The soft rhythm of the turn signal. The occasional rush of another car passing beside us. Then even those sounds became rare. My phone showed almost midnight when the sedan slowed. I checked Ethan's messages again. Nothing new. That should have comforted me. It did not. The car turned onto a smoother road, traveled another half-mile, then stopped. Through the metal around me came the low mechanical sound of a gate opening. We moved again. I counted 23 seconds before the sedan finally stopped. Doors opened outside. Men's voices followed. Mr. Moretti is inside. Bring the case to his office. My stomach dropped. The leather case was still pressed against my shoulder. Footsteps approached. I sat up as much as the cramped space allowed. The trunk clicked. Cold air rushed inside. Light flooded over me. I raised one hand over my eyes. When my vision adjusted, 3 men in dark suits were staring down at me. Nobody spoke. One man looked at the leather case, then at me, as if trying to decide which part of the situation made less sense. "Please do not panic," I said. His expression remained perfectly still. "I was about to tell you the same thing." I climbed out carefully, my legs stiff after the drive. The first thing I saw was the house. It was not really a house. It was a stone estate surrounded by tall trees, broad lawns, and iron fencing. Manhattan was long behind us. Wherever we were in Westchester County, privacy had clearly been purchased by the acre. Warm light glowed through tall windows. Security cameras watched the driveway. 2 more men stood near the entrance. I tightened my grip on my purse. "I can explain." "You will," a voice said from behind them. Everyone became quiet. Not nervous, not startled, just instantly attentive. The men stepped aside. Dominic Moretti walked toward us wearing a charcoal overcoat over a dark suit. He looked somewhere in his late 30s, with dark hair, pale skin, and a face that revealed almost nothing. He did not need to raise his voice. The silence around him did that work for him. His eyes moved from me to the open trunk. "Who is she?" "We do not know, sir. She was inside the car." Dominic looked back at me. "Did you steal anything?" "No." "Did someone send you?" "No." "Do you know whose car this is?" I did not when I climbed into it. One of the men glanced away, possibly hiding a smile. Dominic did not. And now, I am beginning to understand that it was a bad choice. That depends on why you made it. My phone vibrated. Every muscle in my body tightened. Dominic noticed, but did not reach for it. I looked down. "Ethan, you cannot hide from me." Another message followed. "I know the car left the city." My mouth went dry. How could he know that? "Is someone following you?" Dominic asked. "My ex-boyfriend." "The man from the garage?" I looked up sharply. "How do you know about the garage?" "My driver mentioned seeing someone searching the level before we left." Dominic's gaze stayed on my face. "Was that him?" "Yes." "Does he know where you are?" "I do not know." That was the first answer that frightened me more than the truth. Dominic looked toward the gate, then back at me. He did not order anyone to search Ethan. He did not ask for my phone. Instead, he stepped slightly aside, leaving a clear path toward the entrance and another toward the driveway behind me. 2 choices, both visible. "You can wait inside while you decide what to do," he said. "Or I can have a car take you somewhere you choose." I stared at him. "Why would you help me?" His expression remained unreadable. "Because frightened people make dangerous decisions." His eyes flicked once toward the trunk. "You have already demonstrated that." Despite everything, a breath of nervous laughter escaped me. Then Dominic asked the question that erased it. "Who are you afraid of, Sophie?" "Ethan Walker," I said. His name sounded strangely ordinary in a place like this. Dominic waited without interrupting, so I kept going. "We dated for almost 2 years. I ended it 6 weeks ago." "Why?" The question was direct, but his voice was not demanding. "Because every boundary became an argument. If I wanted an evening alone, he wanted to know why. If I went somewhere without him, he wanted to know who was there. After we broke up, he started showing up near my work." Dominic glanced toward my phone. "And tonight?" "He was waiting in the garage." "Has he threatened you?" I hesitated. "Not exactly." Dominic's expression did not change. "That was not the question." I looked at him. "He says things that sound harmless until you realize they are not. That I cannot avoid him forever. That he knows me better than I know myself. That we belong together whether I am angry or not." Dominic was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to go home?" I pictured my apartment building, the lobby windows, the sidewalk Ethan knew too well. "No. A hotel. He knows where I work. He knows my friends." My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. Dominic nodded once. "Then you can stay here until morning." I stared at him. "You are offering a stranger a room?" "I am offering someone who arrived unexpectedly a locked door and a few hours to think." "What do you want in return?" Something almost amused passed through his eyes. "Nothing. Men do not usually offer things for nothing." The amusement disappeared. "Then perhaps you have been dealing with the wrong men." I folded my arms. "I have a condition." One of the security men looked at Dominic, apparently surprised anyone would say that to him. Dominic only asked, "What is it?" "No decisions about my life. You do not call Ethan. You do not take my phone. You do not send anyone after him. Tomorrow, if I decide to leave, I leave." Dominic studied me for several seconds. "Agreed." I had expected resistance. "That easily?" You asked for control over your own choices, not mine. And you are fine with that. I did not say I would agree with every choice you make. His voice stayed calm. I said they remain yours. My shoulders loosened slightly. Then what is your condition? No lies under my roof. About everything? About anything that could bring a problem through my gate. Fair. Agreed. Dominic turned toward the entrance. Come inside. You are freezing. I followed him into a foyer of pale stone, dark wood, and warm amber light. An older woman appeared from a hallway carrying a folded towel. Sophie, this is Margaret Hale, Dominic said. She will show you the guest room. Margaret smiled. You look soaked, sweetheart. I had taken 3 steps toward the staircase when the front door opened behind us. A security man entered. Mr. Moretti. Dominic turned. What is it? Silver sedan outside the west perimeter. It has passed twice in the last 6 minutes. My stomach tightened. Dominic looked at me instead of giving an order. What does? Ethan drive. A silver sedan. Do you want me to have someone approach him? Every face in the foyer waited for Dominic. Dominic waited for me. That difference mattered more than I expected. No, I said. Unless he tries to enter, do nothing. Dominic turned to the security man. You heard her. Yes, sir. The man left. I stared at Dominic. You actually listened. We made an agreement. Outside, headlights moved briefly between the trees beyond the iron fence. My phone vibrated. Ethan, I know you are in there. My fingers went cold. Dominic saw my expression but stayed where he was. Sophie, he said quietly, tell me what you want me to do. For the first time that night, the most powerful person in the room was not the man everyone obeyed. It was the woman he had chosen to ask. Nothing, I said. I want you to do nothing unless he tries to come through that gate. Dominic held my gaze for a second, then nodded. Then nothing happens. It should not have surprised me. We had made an agreement less than 10 minutes earlier. Still, I had known men who could turn 10 minutes into enough time to forget every promise they had made. Margaret led me upstairs while Dominic remained in the foyer. The guest room overlooked a dark stretch of lawn bordered by trees. From the window, I could see part of the iron fence and the wet road beyond it. Ethan's silver sedan was gone. That did not make me feel better. Margaret gave me gray sweatpants, a cream sweatshirt, and clean socks. Bathroom is through there. Door locks from the inside. I looked at her. Did Dominic tell you to mention that? She smiled gently. No. I have lived long enough to know when someone needs to hear it. After she left, I changed and washed the rain from my face. I tried lying down. 5 minutes later, I was sitting up. 10 minutes after that, I gave up. The house was quiet when I went downstairs. A light glowed beneath a doorway near the back hall. I followed the smell of coffee into a large kitchen and found Dominic standing beside an older man with silver hair. You were supposed to take those with food, Dominic said, pointing at a prescription bottle. I am 71, not 70. Man replied. Then stop behaving like you need supervision. The older man noticed me and smiled. You must be Sophie. Dominic sighed. Thomas. What? A woman appears in your trunk and you expect the household not to be curious? I laughed before I could stop myself. Dominic looked at him with the patience of someone who had lost this argument many times. Margaret entered carrying a plate of toast. Thomas Hale, my husband, she said. Professional nuisance. Retired professional nuisance, Thomas corrected. Dominic moved the medicine beside the plate. Eat. There was no audience for the gesture, no performance in it. He simply knew Thomas's medication schedule. I noticed other things after that. Dominic thanked Margaret when she handed him coffee. He knew the name of the young security guard who entered to give an update. When Thomas complained about a doctor's appointment, Dominic reminded him of the time without checking a calendar. None of it matched the picture my imagination had created from the silent men and guarded gates. I wrapped both hands around a mug Margaret gave me. Dominic crossed toward the counter beside me. I stepped backward automatically. One step. My body moved before my mind understood why. Dominic stopped. His eyes flicked briefly to the space between us. Then he moved back. 1 step. 2. 3. He said nothing. He did not ask what was wrong. He did not look offended. He simply gave me room. My throat tightened. Ethan had always treated distance like rejection. If I stepped back, he stepped forward. If I asked for space, he wanted an explanation until the explanation became another argument. Dominic had enough authority to make everyone in this house move when he spoke. Yet he had just used that authority over the only person he could fully control. Himself. Thank you, I said. You do not have to thank me for giving you space. My phone vibrated on the counter. I looked down. Ethan, you cannot stay behind those gates forever. Dominic did not look at the screen. Another message? Yes. Do you want to talk about it? I studied him. Not tonight. All right. That was it. No pressure. No demand disguised as concern. Dominic lifted his coffee and moved toward the doorway. Try to sleep, Sophie. Morning usually makes choices look different. I watched him leave. I still did not know exactly who Dominic Moretti was or why everyone around him became quieter when he entered a room. But standing in that warm kitchen after midnight, I understood something more important. Power was not always measured by how easily a man could make other people obey him. Sometimes it was measured by whether he could choose not to. Morning arrived with pale sunlight across the guest room floor and the unfamiliar feeling of having slept for almost 4 uninterrupted hours. For me, that counted as progress. I checked my phone before getting out of bed. 8 missed calls from numbers I did not recognize. 3 messages from Ethan. The newest had arrived at 5:17. We need to finish this conversation. I stared at the words, then took screenshots instead of deleting them. Downstairs, Margaret was making eggs while Thomas argued that toast qualified as breakfast. Dominic stood near the windows with a cup of coffee, already dressed in a dark suit. He looked at me when I entered. Did you sleep? A little. How are you feeling? Like I want my own clothes and my own apartment. Dominic nodded. Then I assume you are leaving. I had prepared myself for a conversation. Maybe even an argument. Yes. All right. His answer came so easily that I frowned. That is it. What else should there be? You said Ethan was outside last night. He was. You think going home is a bad idea? I do. But you are still letting me leave? Dominic set his coffee down. Sophie, I am not letting you do anything. You are leaving because you decided to leave. The distinction landed harder than I expected. He continued. If you want help, I can provide it. What kind of help? People who can determine how Ethan found you here. Legal advice. Security. Information. And if I say no, then I open the gate. I looked at him for a long moment. I will not escape one man who controls me by handing my choices to another. Margaret became very interested in the stove. Thomas lowered his coffee. Dominic's expression remained still, but I saw the words reach him. Fair, he said. Then he looked toward the hallway. Open the gate. 20 minutes later, a rideshare I ordered myself carried me south toward Manhattan. Dominic did not send anyone with me. By 10:30, I was back at the bakery wearing my own clothes, tying an apron around my waist, and pretending the previous night belonged to someone else. The smell of vanilla, butter, and fresh coffee helped. So did ordinary problems. A late delivery. 2 missing cake boxes. A customer insisting ivory frosting looked too white. At 12:40, my coworker Rachel walked into the office carrying a cream envelope. Courier dropped this off for you. My name was written across the front in Ethan's handwriting. The bakery suddenly felt too quiet. Did he come inside? No. Delivery guy brought it. I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies of my driver's license, part of my apartment lease, a bank statement, and an old employment form. Documents Ethan could have photographed during the years when I trusted him enough to leave paperwork on my kitchen table. A note rested beneath them. We should talk before you make this worse. My hands went cold. I photographed everything, saved the images, and put the originals back into the envelope. Then I called my landlord about changing the locks, updated my banking passwords, and told building security at work that Ethan was not allowed upstairs. At 3:16, an unknown number sent me a message. You think Moretti makes you untouchable? I read it twice. Then a third time. I had never told Ethan Dominic's last name. I had never texted it, spoken it on the phone, or mentioned it to anyone Ethan knew. Yet somehow he knew exactly whose car I had entered. For the first time, I understood that going back to Dominic would not have to mean surrendering control. Maybe power was not something another person had to use for me. Maybe it could be knowledge I learned to use myself. I looked at the envelope on my desk and made a decision. The first time I went through Dominic Moretti's gates, fear had carried me there. If I went back, I would walk through them by choice. I finished my shift. Before I went back, that detail mattered to me. I did not abandon the bakery, call Dominic in a panic, or ask him to send a car. I closed the register, checked the next morning's orders, changed out of my apron, and walked outside at 6:20 with Ethan's envelope inside my bag. Then I ordered my own rideshare to Westchester County. The first time I crossed Dominic Moretti's property line, I had been folded inside a trunk with no idea where I was going. This time, I watched the iron gates open through the windshield. I gave my name to security. I walked through the front door. Dominic was in his office when Margaret brought me inside. He stood when he saw me. Sophie. His eyes moved to the envelope in my hand. What happened? I placed it on his desk. This was delivered to the bakery. I showed him the copies of my driver's license, lease, bank statement, and employment form. Then I showed him Ethan's message mentioning Moretti. Dominic read it without taking my phone. You never told him my name? No. Anyone else? No. Then finding out how he learned it is the first question. Before that, I need you to understand something. Dominic looked at me. Go ahead. I took a breath. I am not here because I want you to make Ethan afraid of you. I do not want you calling him, threatening him, or deciding what happens next. Then why are you here? Because you know how information moves. You know people who understand security. I need resources, not rescue. His expression changed slightly. What kind of resources? An attorney who understands harassment and privacy. Someone who can check whether my accounts or phone have been compromised. Someone who can figure out how Ethan got those documents and your name. Dominic leaned back against his desk. You came here for tools. Yes. Not protection. I want to learn how to protect myself. Silence filled the office for several seconds. Then Dominic walked to a drawer, removed a legal pad, and wrote 3 names with phone numbers. Laura Mitchell, attorney, privacy and harassment cases. Benjamin Cole, cybersecurity consultant. Nathan Pierce, financial investigator. He tore off the page and handed it to me. They work for whoever hires them. If you call, you are their client. Not me. I looked at the paper. You are not calling first. You asked for resources. I did. So I am giving you resources. I almost smiled. You really can listen. Occasionally. Over the next 3 days, those names became a plan. Laura helped me preserve every message and document. Benjamin checked my accounts and found repeated login attempts connected to information Ethan already knew. Nathan traced the mystery of Dominic's name to something surprisingly ordinary. Ethan had photographed the sedan in the garage and asked an acquaintance who worked for a private parking service to identify the registration company. From there, he found public business records connecting that company to Dominic. No secret network. No impossible detective work. Just obsession combined with information that should never have been used that way. Knowing the answer made Ethan feel less mysterious. Less powerful. He was not everywhere. He had simply learned to make me feel as if he were. On the 3rd afternoon, Laura placed a folder in front of me containing dates, screenshots, delivery records, and account activity. This is the pattern, she said. I stared at it. For weeks, Ethan had made every incident seem isolated. On paper, none of it was isolated. I called Dominic afterward. We found out how Ethan got your name. And it was disappointingly ordinary. Most frightening things become smaller once you understand how they work. I looked at the folder in front of me. I think that is happening. Dominic was quiet. What happens next? For once, I already knew the answer. Next, I stopped running. 3 days after Laura placed that folder in front of me, I sat at a small coffee shop near Bryant Park with a cup of tea cooling between my hands. Meeting Ethan had been my decision, but it had not been an impulsive one. Laura had made something clear first. I did not owe him a conversation. Formal communication could go through her. I understood that. I still wanted to say one thing where he could hear my voice and could not rewrite my meaning later. So we made rules. Daylight. Public place. Cameras. Nearby. Laura knew the location and time. Dominic waited inside a hotel lobby half a block away because that was exactly where I had asked him to stay. Ethan arrived 7 minutes late. He sat across from me wearing the same expression he used whenever he believed I was being unreasonable. You finally decided to talk. I decided to make something clear. Sophie, this has gotten completely out of control. I agree. Relief appeared on his face too quickly. Then come home and we can fix this. No. One word. No explanation attached. Ethan stared at me. You dragged strangers into our relationship. There is no relationship. You know what I mean. I know what you keep refusing to understand. I placed Laura's business card on the table. From now on, any necessary communication goes through my attorney. Do not call me. Do not message me. Do not come to my apartment, my workplace, or anywhere you expect me to be. Do not access my accounts. Do not keep or use copies of my personal information. His jaw tightened. This is Moretti talking. No. You think you are powerful because some man like him is standing behind you. My heartbeat quickened, but I kept my hands around the T. Dominic is not standing behind me. Ethan glanced toward the windows. Then where is he? That is none of your business. You barely know him. This is not about him. I leaned forward slightly. That is the part you still do not understand. You keep turning my decisions into something another person must have caused because you cannot accept that I made them myself. Ethan pushed his chair back and stood. Across the street, through the glass doors of the hotel lobby, I saw Dominic move. One step toward the entrance. Instinct. Nothing more. I looked directly at him. Stay? He could not hear me. He did not need to. Dominic stopped. A man whose employees responded to a glance had just obeyed mine. Ethan followed my eyes and saw him. There. You see? He is waiting to step in. Because I asked him to stay nearby. Same thing. No. It is the opposite. I stood, keeping the table between us. Ethan remained on his side. Dominic being stronger than you does not make me stronger. Dominic being feared does not make me brave. I became stronger when I stopped believing I needed your permission to leave. Ethan's expression shifted. For once, he had no argument ready. You cannot just erase 2 years. I am not erasing them. I learned from them. I picked up my bag. And I am done letting those 2 years decide the rest of my life. I walked out without waiting for an answer. Dominic stepped from the hotel lobby only after I reached the sidewalk. He looked past me toward the coffee shop, then back at me. Do you want me to do anything? No. Every protective instinct in his face seemed to resist that answer. Still, he nodded. All right. We started walking. At the corner, I realized my hands were trembling. Dominic noticed, but did not touch me. He simply matched my pace. You stayed back, I said. You told me to. Even when he stood up. Especially then. I looked at him. Dominic's voice lowered. If I ignore your boundaries whenever I believe I know better, then I am not protecting your freedom. I am replacing it with my judgment. The crosswalk signal changed. I stepped off the curb beside him. Manhattan moved around us in noise and afternoon light. For weeks, I had believed safety would arrive when someone powerful finally stood between Ethan and me. I had been wrong. Safety began when I learned that I could stand on my own, and the right person would know when not to stand in my way. For the next 2 weeks, my life became ordinary again, and I discovered how extraordinary ordinary could feel. Ethan stopped contacting me directly. Laura handled what remained through formal channels. Benjamin helped me secure every account, and my landlord changed the locks at my apartment. I went back to opening the bakery before sunrise, checking delivery invoices, fixing crooked frosting, and drinking coffee that was usually cold before I remembered it existed. Dominic remained in my life too. Carefully. Sometimes he called after work. Sometimes we met for coffee in Manhattan. Once, Margaret invited me to dinner, and Thomas spent 20 minutes telling me stories about Dominic as a teenager, while Dominic threatened to ban him from dessert. I laughed more that night than I had in months. Nothing between Dominic and me moved quickly. That was what made it matter. He never reached for my hand, without giving me time to meet him halfway. He never asked where I was every hour. He never turned silence into an accusation. Sometimes we simply sat across from each other while the city moved outside the window, and I learned that quiet could feel safe when nobody was using it to punish you. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, I saw a familiar man across the street from the bakery. Dark coat, earpiece, the same security guard who had been near Dominic's sedan the first night. When our eyes met, he looked away. I told myself it was coincidence. At 6:15, I left through the employee entrance. A black sport utility vehicle sat half a block away. Another face I recognized was behind the wheel. My stomach tightened. I called Dominic. He answered immediately. Sophie, are your people watching me? Silence. That was enough. How long? I asked. Since you left the estate. I stopped beneath the bakery awning. Rain tapped softly against the canvas above me. You promised me no decisions about my life. I promised not to interfere with your decisions. You assigned people to follow me without telling me. They were there to keep distance and make sure you were safe. Safe. The word landed like something breaking. Ethan had used different versions of the same excuse. Concern. Love. Protection. Every boundary crossed for a supposedly good reason. I am coming over, I said. We should talk. I agree. I am coming because I choose to. His answer was immediate. Understood. An hour later, I stood in Dominic's office with rain tracing the windows behind him. There are risks connected to me, he said. Risks you do not fully understand. Then tell me about them. Some information would only make you more vulnerable. That is still my decision. His jaw tightened. Sophie, I was trying to protect you. A cage does not become freedom because the man holding the key loves you. The room went completely still. Dominic looked at me as though I had placed a mirror in front of him, and he did not like what it showed. I am not Ethan. Then prove it. Silence stretched between us. Dominic reached for his phone. Remove everyone assigned to Sophie Bennett. Effective immediately. He listened. Yes, everyone. Then he ended the call and placed the phone on his desk. Done. I stared at him. And if I walk out that door? His eyes held mine. For the first time since I had met him, power looked painful on him because using it would be easier than surrendering it. He stepped away from the doorway. Then you walk out. You will not follow me. No. You will not send anyone. No. Even if you think I am making a mistake. Dominic was quiet for a moment. Especially then. I picked up my coat. Part of me wanted him to stop me. That frightened me almost as much as wanting to stay. I walked toward the door and turned once. Dominic had not moved. No command. No bargain. No promise designed to pull me back. He simply let me choose. I walked through the house, past the warm kitchen, through the front entrance, and down the stone steps. The iron gate opened ahead of me. This time, nobody was chasing me. Nobody was waiting outside. Nobody was deciding where I belonged. I crossed through alone, and Dominic Moretti did the hardest thing a powerful man had ever done for me. He let me go. A month passed before I saw Dominic again. He kept every promise he made the night I walked through his gate alone. No familiar faces appeared outside the bakery. No black vehicles waited near my apartment. No quiet calls asking where I was or when I would be home. At first, the absence felt strange. I had spent so long adjusting my life around being watched that freedom had its own unfamiliar silence. Then I remembered what silence was supposed to feel like. Peace. Laura continued handling the final legal details, and Ethan made no further attempt to contact me. I moved to another apartment because I wanted a fresh beginning, not because anyone forced me to disappear. It was smaller than my old place, with scratched hardwood floors, east-facing windows, and a kitchen barely large enough for 2 people, but every key belonged to me. I called my parents and finally told them enough to explain why I had. Sounded different for months. I started sleeping through the night. I stopped studying every silver sedan on the street. I became ordinary again, and ordinary felt beautiful. Then, on a cool Friday evening, I finished closing the bakery at 7:30 and stepped onto the sidewalk carrying a small box of pastries Margaret had ordered. Across the avenue sat a black sedan. I recognized it immediately. My body remembered before my mind did. The rain, the garage, darkness inside the trunk. Then the driver's door opened, and Dominic stepped out alone. No security detail. No one waiting behind him. Just Dominic in a dark navy coat beside the car that had carried me into his world. He did not cross the street. He did not wave me over. He waited. That mattered. The pedestrian signal changed. I could have turned toward the subway entrance 20 yards behind me. I could have ordered a rideshare. I could have walked home. Instead, I crossed the avenue. Dominic watched me approach. 31 days, I said. One corner of his mouth lifted. You counted. You noticed. I notice most things. That habit has caused us problems. I remember. I held up the bakery box. Margaret ordered these. She has been finding reasons to order from your bakery twice a week. I suspected that. Thomas says she is interfering. Thomas encouraged her. Dominic almost smiled. Manhattan moved around us, headlights sliding over wet pavement, footsteps passing behind me, steam rising from a street grate. For once, the man everyone seemed to fear looked uncertain. Why are you here? I asked. Margaret wants you to come to dinner. And you? Dominic looked directly at me. I wanted to see you. No command hidden inside the sentence. No expectation. Just an answer. What if I had walked the other direction? I would have gone home. No following. No. No security appearing mysteriously outside my building tomorrow. No. You really did learn something. More than one thing, I hope. I looked at the sedan. Dominic followed my gaze, but did not open the door for me. He understood that even a polite gesture could become an assumption if he made it too soon. Need a ride? He asked. For simple words. A question with room for either answer. I looked behind me. The subway entrance was still there. Taxis moved along the avenue. My apartment waited across town. Nothing was chasing me. Nothing was forcing me toward that car. I walked around the sedan. For 1 second, my hand rested near the trunk. I remembered the frightened woman who had climbed inside because 10 seconds had seemed like all the choice she had left. Then I kept walking, past the rear door, to the front passenger side. I opened it myself. "Dinner," I said, "with Margaret and Thomas." "Of course. And afterward, you drive me home, if that is what you want." I sat beside him and fastened my seatbelt. Dominic started the engine, but waited until I nodded before pulling into traffic. 1,000 city lights reflected across the windshield. I did not know what we would become. I did not need to know yet. The first time I entered Dominic Moretti's car, fear put me there. The second time, I sat beside him because no one was choosing for me anymore.